That creeping sense of forgetfulness isn't just a number on a birthday cake. It's the misplaced keys, the name that evaporates from the tip of the tongue, the momentary confusion in a familiar story. One may feel as though a silent thief is slowly, methodically, stealing the pages from their own life's library. But a forgotten nutrient, a building block of thought itself, lost to the modern diet, could be the key to not just locking the door on this thief, but rebuilding the library itself. This is not about Sudoku puzzles or learning a new language, as beneficial as those activities may be. This goes deeper, to the very structure and signaling of the brain's trillions of connections. The prevailing wisdom has focused on exercising the mind, but it has largely ignored the raw materials required to keep the mind's machinery in working order. For decades, an individual has been told to manage symptoms, to accept cognitive slips as an inevitable part of aging. This is the great deception. The gradual dimming of mental clarity is not a mandatory sentence. It is often the result of a profound, chronic nutritional deficiency that starves the very cells responsible for memory, learning, and focus. The human brain, a 3-pound universe of staggering complexity, operates on a constant flow of electrical and chemical signals. At the heart of this communication network are neurotransmitters, chemical messengers that leap across tiny gaps between brain cells, called synapses, carrying instructions for everything from breathing to recalling a cherished childhood moment. One of these messengers is paramount for cognition. Its name is acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is the conductor of the brain's orchestra, governing the speed and clarity of thought, the encoding of new memories, and the retrieval of old ones. When levels of acetylcholine are optimal, the mind is sharp, focused, and agile. Thoughts connect seamlessly. Memories are retrieved with ease. But when the raw materials to produce this critical neurotransmitter become scarce, the orchestra falls into disarray. The signals weaken, they slow down, and sometimes they don't arrive at all. This creates static in the system. This creates the fog. This creates the frustrating search for a word that was there only a second ago. This is the memory thief's true identity. A gradual, systemic starvation of the brain's ability to produce acetylcholine. It's not a monster hiding in the shadows. It is an absence. A nutritional void created over a lifetime of well-intentioned but misguided dietary advice. But if this is a simple deficiency, a missing piece of the puzzle, a critical question arises. What biological process is being starved? And what have we been unknowingly feeding for the last 50 years that has allowed this to happen? What if the healthy eating revolution of the late 20th century was, in one crucial aspect, a catastrophic mistake for brain health? Research from institutions like the Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy at Tufts University is beginning to illuminate a startling connection between modern dietary trends and cognitive decline. The war on dietary fat, specifically the demonization of cholesterol-rich foods, had an unintended and devastating consequence. It systematically stripped the Western diet of its most potent source of a nutrient called choline. Choline is not a vitamin or a mineral in the traditional sense. It is something more fundamental. It is an essential nutrient that functions as a primary architectural component of every single cell membrane in the human body. Think of it as the mortar holding the bricks of a house together. Without sufficient choline, the structural integrity of our cells, especially the delicate and high-energy cells of the brain, begins to weaken. They become leaky, inefficient, and vulnerable to damage. But its role as a structural component is only half the story. The body uses choline as the direct precursor to synthesize the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. No choline, no acetylcholine. It is that simple. This changes everything. The brain cannot function without it. And for decades, the very foods that nature packed with this essential brain builder were pushed to the back of the shelf. Whole eggs, particularly the yolks, organ meats like liver. These were the nutritional powerhouses of previous generations. They were staples on the tables of our parents and grandparents. Then, they were branded as villains, high in fat and cholesterol, and replaced with processed grains, sugar-laden snacks, and vegetable oils. We were told this was progress. We were told this was for our hearts. No one mentioned what it was doing to our brains. The body can produce a small amount of choline on its own in the liver, but this amount is wholly insufficient to meet the brain's enormous demands, especially as one ages. The vast majority must come from diet. The National Institutes of Health now recognizes that a significant portion of the population does not consume the recommended daily intake of choline, with older adults being particularly at risk due to changes in diet and metabolism. This isn't a new discovery. locked away in a laboratory. It's a rediscovery of ancient wisdom. The very foods modern society shunned were the same ones prized by older cultures for their life-giving properties. The deception wasn't just in what we were told to eat, but in what we were told to forget. And the reasons why this vital information was ignored, buried under mountains of marketing for low-fat products, are more unsettling than one might imagine. Is it possible that the knowledge of brain-fortifying foods has been with us for millennia, only to be lost in the noise of the modern age? The evidence is compelling. Ancient Greek physicians, including Hippocrates, often prescribed specific diets to their patients for ailments of the mind and spirit. Writings suggest a deep understanding that certain foods possessed unique properties. While they lacked the language of neurotransmitters and cell membranes, they observed the results. They saw that diets rich in organ meats and eggs, foods we now know are dense in choline, seemed to foster clarity and robustness of mind. This wasn't exclusive to the Greeks. Traditional cultures across the globe, from the Nordic peoples prizing fish roe to Native American tribes valuing the organs of a hunt, intuitively consumed choline-rich foods. It wasn't about brain health as a concept. It was about survival, vitality, and passing wisdom to the next generation. These foods were revered. They were not discarded. They were central. Then came the industrialization of food in the 20th century. This seismic shift brought convenience, but at a cost. Whole foods were replaced by fractionated, processed products designed for shelf life, not human life. The low-fat dietary guidelines, first introduced in the United States in the late 1970s, accelerated this trend exponentially. Suddenly, the egg yolk, one of nature's most perfect foods and a powerhouse of choline, became a pariah. The consequences were not immediate. A deficiency of this nature is not like a broken bone. It is a slow erosion, a gradual fading over years and decades. An individual wouldn't notice the change from one day to the next. They would simply find, in their 50s and 60s, that their mental landscape seemed a bit more barren, a bit foggier than they remembered. They would attribute it to age, because that is what they were told. This quiet epidemic of choline deficiency has been a silent partner to the rise in age-related cognitive decline. While many factors are at play, ignoring this foundational nutrient is like trying to build a brick house without mortar. Sooner or later, the walls will begin to crumble. One may ask, if this connection is so clear, why isn't it front-page news? The answer lies in the complexity of nutrition science and the immense inertia of public health messaging. It's far simpler to market a brain-boosting puzzle or a highly processed health food than it is to re-educate the public on the value of traditional whole foods. But for those seeking to reclaim their cognitive vitality, the path forward is not found in a gimmick. It is found by looking back. But a critical question remains for many. What if one's diet or health conditions make consuming these specific foods difficult? The form of this nutrient one chooses to supplement with can be the most important decision of all. Rebuilding the brain's supply of this essential architect molecule is a two-pronged approach: dietary restoration and, when necessary, intelligent supplementation. The goal is to provide the brain with a consistent, bioavailable source of choline to repair cellular structures and ramp up the production of the memory neurotransmitter, acetylcholine. First, the dietary foundation. The single most potent source of choline is beef liver. A modest 3-ounce serving can provide well over the daily recommended amount. For generations, liver was a common part of the diet, but it has fallen out of favor. Reintroducing it, perhaps once a week, can have a profound impact. For those who find liver unpalatable, the humble egg is the next best champion. Specifically, the yolk. One large egg yolk contains a significant amount of choline. The fear of cholesterol in eggs has been largely debunked by major studies, with research now showing that for most people, dietary cholesterol has little effect on blood cholesterol. Enjoying whole eggs daily can be one of the simplest and most effective strategies for brain health. Other valuable sources include shiitake mushrooms, soybeans in the form of tofu or edamame, red kidney beans, and even cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower, though one would need to eat much larger quantities to get the same impact as from eggs or liver. The principle is clear. A return to whole, unprocessed foods is the first and most critical step. However, for some individuals, achieving optimal levels through diet alone can be a challenge. This is where supplementation becomes a powerful tool. But not all choline supplements are created equal. The most common and inexpensive form, choline bitartrate, is not very efficient at crossing the blood-brain barrier. Much of it gets used by the body before it can ever reach the mind. Two specific forms, however, have shown remarkable promise in clinical research. The first is alpha-GPC. This form is highly bioavailable and readily crosses the blood-brain barrier, delivering choline directly where it is needed for acetylcholine production. The second is citicoline, which not only provides choline but also cytidine, a precursor to another vital component of cell membranes. Studies suggest both can support memory and cognitive function in aging adults. Consulting with a healthcare provider to see if these advanced forms are appropriate is a wise course of action. The rebuilding process is a marathon, not a sprint. It requires consistency, but the effects can be noticeable. A gradual lifting of the fog, a sharpening of focus, a welcome return of clarity. Yet science is now revealing an even more exciting prospect. This ancient nutrient is a powerhouse on its own, but when it is combined with one specific, common kitchen spice, its brain rebuilding effects may be amplified in a truly remarkable way. The fortress of the mind is built not only with strong bricks and mortar, but also with vigilant guards. The brain is under constant assault from oxidative stress, a biological rusting caused by free radicals. This process damages brain cells and accelerates cognitive decline. Choline and its derivatives work to rebuild the structure, but a powerful antioxidant can protect that structure as it's being built. This is where a simple herb, found in kitchens for centuries, enters the story. Rosemary. Rosemary contains potent compounds, notably carnosic acid and rosmarinic acid. Research published in journals like Therapeutic Advances in Psychopharmacology indicates that these compounds have powerful neuroprotective effects. They act like a cellular defense force, neutralizing free radicals and reducing inflammation within the brain. This creates a safer, more stable environment for choline to perform its restorative work. The synergy is elegant. Rosemary protects the brain cells from damage, while choline provides the raw materials to repair them and enhance their communication. It's a classic defense and repair strategy. This can be as simple as incorporating fresh or dried rosemary into cooking, or enjoying rosemary tea. The aroma itself has even been linked in small studies to improved memory performance. This brings us to a pivotal study from Boston University, which followed thousands of participants for years. The researchers found a direct correlation between higher choline intake and better performance on memory tests, as well as healthier brain structures on MRI scans. The science is no longer speculative. It demonstrates that individuals who prioritize this nutrient are actively building a more resilient brain, a brain less susceptible to the ravages of time. This knowledge is not meant to be a cure-all, but a source of profound empowerment. It shifts the narrative from one of passive acceptance of decline to one of active, strategic self-care. It puts the controls back in one's own hands. The senior moment does not have to be a life sentence. The fog does not have to be permanent. One can reclaim the sharpness, the clarity, the confidence that may have begun to fade. It begins with a conscious decision to reject the great deception and nourish the brain with the foundational materials it has been missing for so long. It is about building a fortress mind, capable of cherishing the memories of a lifetime while creating vibrant new ones for all the years to come. Imagine a future where one's mind is not a source of anxiety, but a trusted and powerful partner in a life lived to its fullest. The path is clear. Understand the role of acetylcholine. Reject the outdated, low-fat dogma that created this deficiency. Reintroduce choline-rich whole foods like eggs and, if possible, liver. Consider intelligent, targeted supplementation with a bioavailable form like alpha-GPC or citicoline after consulting a professional. And protect the brain with powerful, natural allies like rosemary. This is not just about remembering where the keys are. It is about holding onto the keys to one's own independence, vitality, and joy. If this journey into the science of brain health has provided value, consider subscribing to Better_Health. We are dedicated to providing clear, evidence-based strategies to help you build a stronger, healthier future. Click the bell to be notified of our next video.